Just going to quickly go through the process of replacing the brake rotors and brake pads on Citroen C2. So you can see I've got the vehicle jacked up safely. I'm not going to hop under it. First thing we need to do is loosen these two bolts here. They are 13mm. Just keep an eye on these washers here as they rotate. You want to keep that locked in so that you can remove the bolt. Next thing we're going to need to do is remove these two big T55 Torx. They are Loctited in as well. Next, we're going to remove these two T30s out of here. They're really not very tight, so you can just remove those. So right now the only thing holding the rotor onto the hub is just the friction between the rotor and the hub itself. New pads and rotors arrived today, so now we just got to check them, make sure they are in fact the right ones for the Citroen C2 before we can go ahead and fit them. Pads certainly look the same, so I'm really happy to take them out of the bag and size them up a bit better. Countersunk holes for the lock screws, 4 studs, the instep, looking good. Let's take a closer look. And they are certainly the same height, which means the hat dimensions are correct and the diameter is perfect as well. So these front hubs, hub mounts or bottom strut mount, whatever you want to call it, have never seen a coat of paint, even from manufacturing. I'm not going to go to the point where I'm going to take that off and paint that. If I was building a car that I wanted to keep for a long time, I would definitely do that. But the intention is to get this car going as quick as possible and as cheap as possible. So I'll just clean up the surface where the disc rotor goes and just give it a quick clean out for dust, and then it'll be going back together again. Well, we've got to the point where we can now put together the front calipers. I've painted the brackets and the calipers. They've come up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that look. It's not perfect, but it's going to make a nice look through the wheel. So now we're going to go ahead and reassemble everything. So there's a bit of talk around the taper pins for these. The taper pins are definitely different. So one of them is got 3 flats on it, and the other one actually has a rubber bush on it on the front. However, on the rears, there's a tapered pin. Basically, what you want to do is to make sure that your leading edge is either the tapered pin or the rubber bushed pin. So in this case here, this is the front right of the car. So if I put this bracket on this way, just slip that in there. Moving in a forward direction, the top one is the leading edge or the leading pin. So in this case, we're going to make that the rubber bush, and the triple flat, we're going to make the trailing pad or the trailing edge. So that's how I'm going to assemble these anyway. I'm just going to apply a bit of Loctite to these. There was Loctite on them already, so I'm going to repeat the process. I am going to clean the rotor down just one more time, just to make sure there's no grit and grime or oil on it. And you can see I've also got the stainless steel clips in place, ready to go as well. Okay, I've got these pads in place and they're fitting perfectly, so that's all looking good. Now we can put the caliper back on. Alright, so that's it, all back together again. I was surprised how far I had to push the piston back into the caliper, but yeah, make sure you push that back basically as far as you can. That way the caliper will slip on over the pads nicely. Something that always worries me is leaving brake fluid in the nipple. In the past, we used to hose them down to wash off all of the brake fluid. But again, water's going to get inside. Unless you dry it out really well before you put your cap on, you're always going to end up with keeping fluid in there. So something I've done is grab your WD-40 with the nice extension tube on it and just give that a little spray out. That way you've got the fluid out of there, but you've also added some anti-corrosive fluid into that, and that's gonna make it so next time you come to do your brakes, everything's gonna be fine for you to crack that off, and you'll be able to bleed your brakes nicely without worrying about the fact that that could be full of some rust and grit and grime. So just a little tip, something that I like to do. Once you've got that all cleaned out and tightened up, you can go ahead and put your dust cap back on that. And there you go. That'll keep it all nice and clean for next time.